So today I'm going to show you how to lubricate and maintain a pair of Sega Saturn twin sticks. Okay, now the first thing you're going to want to do is remove the grips. So each grip has a screw or a bolt with a locking washer and a little nut. So you want to be careful when you remove them that you don't let the nuts fall out. They fit into these holes here. And you can leave this top screw in, and you're going to detach them from the board. And obviously this one goes to this stick, this one goes to this stick, so that's not tough. And they do slide up through. There's a hole, I'll show you. This one's already been lubricated. But there's a channel right through there that the hole plug for the stick passes through and can be plugged back into the board. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is remove the E-clip right here. There's little divots in there that you can hook with a small screwdriver. You're going to want to be very careful. There it is. You're going to want to be very careful when you take the C-clip off that the actuator doesn't shoot off or the spring. I think that's probably more of an issue with fighting joysticks, but you'd want to be careful with this one too. The springs are incredibly strong. And that's actually something I wanted to mention. I could not put it together by myself. I fashioned a tool with a hand wrench here to push down on the actuator with the restrictor plate taken off in order to compress the spring enough to get the C-clip back or the E-clip back on. And I actually had to have a friend help me do it because there was just no way. He held the shaft from underneath, the metal shaft, and then pushed down on the wrench for me. And I wrapped the actuator with multiple layers of masking tape, so the actuator was nice and protected. And then he pushed down on it with the wrench, and I slipped the clip back on. So, like I said, you're going to want to hook this in here, basically, and gently pull it out. And then you can remove your actuator and start pulling it apart to disassemble and clean. Okay, so after some careful prying, we got the C-clip off, or the E-clip. I call them E-clips. It looks like an E to me, but the internet. But I went ahead and pulled that off, and I like to keep track of it with my magnetic grabber. And then here you have your actuator, which you can pull off. If you can pull it off one-handed. And then you have the evil holy mother of springs. This thing is insane. I'm pushing as hard as I'm able to, and it's not budging. So we're going to take off our restrictor plates. I'm going to put the camera down for that. So we have one of the sticks disassembled here. And if we look over here, we've got the E-clip or C-clip, depending on what you call it, the actuator, the spring stopper or spring clip, and then this is the pivot here on the front of the joystick, on the top of the stick, so it pivots in the hole from there, and then this notch is so the cord for the trigger and the turbos has somewhere to go. And then we have our four-way gate here. So basically, pretty much all this stuff is going to get lubricated with the lithium grease. And then we have our stick here. And you can see where I unclipped it from the little plug here to give myself a little bit more room to work with. And it slides through there. And here you can see the pivot in place so you can get a better idea of what I meant. So all that's going to get lubricated as well. A note on the super important spring stopper or spring catch, that black washer down there, the flat side goes outward. What I mean is pointing toward the camera. There's a slightly hump side on the other side. It gets thicker toward the center, and that is basically helps it pivot in the hole. And then this is what your spring sits on top of, and then the actuator is on the other side, and then you have this white part here, the pivot, which is going to get cleaned up. But under that, you'll notice that it's keyed. What I mean by that is it's flat on one side, and that's what keeps the stick from rotating, the grip, because the as you noticed before, the screws pass through here, and then the keyed part keeps it pointing forward. And you know there's a little bit of play in there, but it's much better than if they just spun around freely. So we're going to clean up these parts and then slap it back together. So here we have our spring stopper and our pivot. The spring stop is 15 millimeters on the outside and 6 millimeters on the inside. It's about 2 millimeters at the edge, and at the humpy part in the middle it's about 2.16 millimeters. The Dreamcast version has sort of a cylinder at the top that the spring goes around, so it's more like a little top hat. Alright, so we got our parts all greased. Then we just have to work on the other end, on the base of it. Also, obviously you can see all the lithium grease that I put in there. That's going to be covered up later by the dust washer, so you won't be able to see that. Okay, so for the cleaning part, I like to use these Lysol dual action wipes because they've got like sort of a scratchy kind of a thing going on. So now I'm going to clean out the spot here where the pivot goes in. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my rocket air duster and see if there's any loose dust I can go out of there. It doesn't look like there really is. I'm just going to take this and wipe up a storm. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Give that a minute or two to dry. Alright, so we're going to put some lithium grease in here. Just kind of smear it around. Then we'll take our pivot piece here. Drop that in there. So put a nice dab of grease here on the back of it. That off again. Alright, so now I have a nice big dab of grease in our shaft. So we'll go ahead and slide that in there to where it keys. And that's fine. And then I'm going to flip this over very carefully. Go. So, get our nice greasy shaft there. Wipe some of that off so we can see what we're doing. Now we're going to put in our spring stopper, making sure that it's flat side up. There we go. So the spring stopper is in. Then we just need our spring. And then comes our actuator. And that's, you see I have the restrictor plate is still off, and that's to give us more room to work with trying to push down on the actuator to get the spring back on, or the clip. So, not going to be videotaping that part, unfortunately. But really all you need is one person to hold the rod from the other side and push down with the wrench, and then you can put on the E-clip. Okay, so I got both of the E-clips or E-rings back on. The second one I actually managed to do by myself. I went to Google Translate and typed in twin stick repair. Yeah, I did a virtual on twin stick repair, I believe. And then I just did a Google image search until I found a picture of the inside of a Saturn twin stick, and then went to the web page and translated it from Japanese into English. And the trick that I found was where the slot in the where the E-clip goes into the shaft. What you can do is, he said he did it with his fingers, but he must be super powered, because my friend that was helping me do the first one, his fingers got so sore that he was going to come back and do it on another day. And I just got impatient and managed to get it on myself. But basically, what you can do is take your wrench here and push down this as hard as you can, and at the same time take a flathead screwdriver and push down on the opposite side as hard as you can on the actuator, and then try to stick the screwdriver into the slot and hold it down slightly to hold the slot open. And then you can start to put the E-clip on, and then you take a pair of pliers and you put one end on the back of the E-clip and then the other on the shaft, and kind of squish it on there carefully. So that's basically how I did it. I'm going to show some pictures from the webpage that I found, and I'll put the link in the description for what it's worth. Because that guy was super helpful. And it's funny because I had actually thought of the screwdriver thing before, but the reason it didn't work is I was using these shitty screwdrivers. What you have to do, and it helps if you have a set of bits or if you have a bunch of screwdrivers, I went through all of my slide-in bits until I found one that fit well in the slot when the E-clip wasn't in there. And then I knew that would be the perfect one to do what I needed to do. So, hopefully that's helpful. But, yeah, I wouldn't do it unless you're really confident and really strong. Yeah, for sure. Because it is a pain in the ass. It's one of the hardest things I've had to do. This thing's been apart for a couple days because of it. But anyway, got it back together. Also, you do want to remember to have this off. I think that's easier. Also, I covered the whole bottom of the circuit board in masking tape, and that way if there was any slips with the screwdriver or with the wrench, you weren't scratching through traces or anything like that. So hopefully that's helpful. Also, I took my Q-tip and I cleaned out the channels where the white plugs have to go, because I don't want them picking up a bunch of lithium grease in the holes or anything like that. And this bad boy's pretty much ready to go back together. Alright, so now we're going to look at the grips. Here's the pivot point that the trigger pivot's on. This is the channel that the wire runs down. This is, of course, the channel where the shaft is. And then this button here is just a little piece of plastic, a little piece of rubber on top, a little board that just slides right out. And then this has a spring, but it's not the scary kind that's going to fly across the room or anything. You just got to gently slide it off. I just do it so you can actually see what I'm doing. There you go. And the spring sits inside of it. and it pushes up against this little wall here, and it runs down a slot in the back there. See? So it's fine. No biggie. So we're going to clean the two red parts, but not this that makes it, hello, I hear you. So we're going to not clean this, but we're going to clean these two parts, and then we're going to lubricate, and then this will be ready to go back together. Alright, so I got the tracks for the buttons and the triggers with a little bit of lithium grease on there. Did the pivots and the button there and the spring. Might be a little overkill, but just in case, can't hurt. But after I get done putting it all together, I'll just take a Q-tip and clean off any of the lithium grease that comes out. Alright, so you can see all the parts put back in, and where I've lubed all the possible contact points, and then we're just going to slap it back together. Alright, so to reassemble our grips, and you'll see I have a little extra lithium grease there. That'll get wiped off with a Q-tip later. What you want to do is put your nut down in the hole. There we go. And then this one down here. Alright, so note that when you go to put the stick back together, make sure you have the dust washer on. Let's try this again. Just feed that through there. And slide that on there. Make sure our wire's all the way down. And it is. And then we can take our screws and our lockety jobbies and put them through the shaft. Make sure you don't lose your locking washers. So put that one in there. That one's going through the shaft, and then we'll try to, this is something else. Could use a short screwdriver. Okay, I did find that the best way to get it to screw right was to turn it sideways, so, whoops, the other way. So the gravity was pulling the nuts down. So this one is back together and feels nice. So that's pretty much it. One more thing. If you find the notion of removing the E-clips prohibitive, you can always try spray lithium grease. So the notion being that you would tilt this up, tilt it around, try to spray as much in the cracks as you can, flip this over, spray as much down there, you know, as much as seems reasonable down there at the spring stopper. And then if you have regular lithium grease, you can apply it more artfully in other places, like inside of the sticks. But like I said, if you're not completely confident in your abilities, I wouldn't necessarily try taking those sticks apart. And the Teflon lithium grease is your best bet. This stuff is crap, though. There's another brand called Blaster that I hear is really good and is all grease and not, you know, this kind of shoots like I guess it's okay, but sometimes like it'll just have juicy propellant that comes out. So. But anyway, I hope that's useful. Thanks for watching.